is Lizelle. This is my first booktube video. I did think about maybe making like one of those new to booktube community newbie tag videos, but in the end I thought I'd do something a little bit different. So I figured I'd talk about my 3 favorite series. I read ebooks primarily, but these ones I do have the physical books. So this is the Mad Adam series by Margaret Atwood. So first one, Orcus and Crake, followed by Year of the Flood, followed by Mad Adam. When I started this series, I actually bought the second book by accident. I didn't realize it was part of a trilogy, so I just saw Margaret Atwood and I freaked out and I picked up Year of the Flood, and then after I read it I was like, they're making a lot of references to something I don't really know about, but whatever, I'll keep reading. And then I realized, okay, this is part of a series. There's a first book and there's going to be an upcoming third book. The point is, this is a great series. So it's a dystopian, essentially, an adult dystopian about this waterless flood, which is like a disease that spreads and like kills off a bunch of humanity, and it's about the survivors. There are a lot of like this sort of feminist elements that you see in The Handmaid's Tale. They're still littered throughout this series, like more in the second book than the first book. The first book is more about the 2 scientists that are sort of tied up in the whole waterless flood, and the second book is about, you know, a woman that is involved in sort of like a prostitution type ring and then comes out of that, and her survival in the waterless flood. And then the last book is those 2 sets of characters coming together. It's just really good. Pretty much anything Margaret Atwood writes is just gonna be good, and that's just my opinion, but I seriously believe that, and I think if you read any of her other books and you like them, you're just gonna be inclined to really like this series. And if you have to start off with Margaret Atwood, you haven't read anything by her before, this is a fantastic series to start off with. I am gonna say right now, even though I love Harry Potter, I'm obviously like wearing a Team Ravenclaw sweater, I love Harry Potter, but I'm not gonna put on this list. 1, it's so boring. Everybody likes Harry Potter, it's just a given. And 2, it's kind of overplayed at this point. Like, I'm kind of tired of hearing about Harry Potter. I think it's been a little bit too commercialized, right? Like, there's so many movies, there's so many like video games and like kitsch and like all this other stuff surrounding it, that it feels like to continue talking about Harry Potter is just so dry, and I can't do it. I feel like I interact with the Harry Potter fandom and the things that people create out of Harry Potter more than like the original canon series. But maybe I'm just like still salty about Cursed Child because I really wanted my pairing to work out and it didn't, so maybe I'm still salty and that's why I didn't put it on this list. Whatever. Moving on, the next series that I'm going to talk about is the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown, who I always want to call Pierce Brosnan. I know Pierce Brosnan didn't write these books, but every time I hear his name I automatically want to call him Pierce Brosnan for whatever reason. But anyway, by Pierce Brown. I actually just got into this series like a couple months ago. I read Red Rising and I was super addicted and I burned through them, and now I'm reading the Iron Gold book, which just came out this month, I think. For sure, yeah, January. Yeah, that came out this month, so I've been reading that. What I like about this series, for one, the world building. Like, it's just this giant, expansive sci-fi world that spans all these different planets, and it's done really well. Like, there's awesome details, the characters are amazing. Like, Severo is my favorite little goblin. I love him to death. The main character is interesting. Not my favorite, but he's definitely, Darrow is someone that I can follow in the series and I'm interested in everything he's doing. And there's all this like political intrigue that sort of feels Game of Thronesy but doesn't read as heavy as something like Game of Thrones or like a higher fantasy, even though it is kind of like, I would call it like an epic sci-fi book. Like I don't think it has a dystopian feel, but it's so far removed from our current world that it doesn't feel properly dystopian. It feels more like a in the very far away future sort of book. I will say, however, this book series, even though it definitely is one of my favorites now, it's not without its problems. For example, in the first couple good books, it's gotten better now, but in the first couple books, first of all, there weren't any main characters that were obviously POC characters. If there were, they were not made obvious, and they were not ingrained enough in that sort of culture that you could even spot them and be like, yeah, no, this character is like a person of color, I know that 100%. You couldn't tell. And then on top of that, there was a lot of ableist language and sort of like ideas. So a character would be introduced and they'd have a disability, and then there'd be all this talk about how they were so strong despite their disability, or they were really beautiful despite this disability, or they managed this and that was really amazing even though this is their disability. Or they talk about they have this disability and it's really unseemly and it's like really gross and that sort of thing, which was so like, came off as very ableist and so unnecessary. Like if you have a character with a disability, let them have the disability and do whatever it is they're doing. Like you don't have to wax poetic about, isn't it so amazing that they can do this even though they're disabled? Lots of disabled people can do lots of things. And that really rubbed me the wrong way in the first couple books. Like I think it's definitely gotten better at this point. In Iron Gold, I haven't noticed anything like that so far. But again, I'm an able-bodied person, so I may not be as sensitive to picking that out as someone that is actually disabled. So pay attention to disabled reviewers and POC reviews. As a person of color, I can say that he has gotten better, and he has integrated more POC characters for sure, and as main characters, but they're still not in like the inner circle of main characters. They're kind of like fringe characters still, which is its own deal. Like I wish that would be better, but it isn't in that particular book series, and that doesn't really stop it from being my favorite. It's a problematic favorite, essentially. The last series, which I've forgotten, I had to remind myself. The Unwind series by Neil Shusterman. Neil Shusterman. I think that sounds right. I'm gonna go with that. If I'm wrong, I'm very sorry. The Unwind series, to me, is like one of the classic dystopian series. I'm now realizing that basically every series on this list is pretty much dystopian. Like Red Rising is a stretch for dystopian, but it's pretty much in that category, so now you know what I really like to read. But anyway, the Unwind series, I think it's like 4 or 5 books. There's like spin-off-y books in it, so it's hard for me to tell exactly how many books are in the series. I personally don't read spin-off books of series. I just don't like it. I don't really want to read little side stories. I want to go through the main plot and then be done. And that's just me personally. But that, as the Unwind series, is what I really like. One, the characters are all great. It's a fantastic concept. The concept, if you don't know, if you haven't heard about the series, is essentially there's teenagers and a lot of them engage in like rapscallion behavior. I don't know what's the better word than rapscallion. Something with a D. Anyway, delinquent. They engage in delinquent behavior essentially, and the government and like parents are really scared, so they invent this protocol where you can retroactively abort your child. And what happens then is that you're unwound. So they take all of your body parts and they donate them to people that need them. And the reason why everybody is cool with this process is because 100% of your body parts are donated, and because you were a delinquent, you're kind of assumed that you were like a scourge of society anyway, and it's better off if you're gone. So the story basically follows these teenagers where their parents signed an order to have them unwound, and they run away and eventually meet other teens and create this sort of whole thing around stopping the process of unwinding. The books are done really well, like all the characters grow and change. He adds new characters and they're just as impressive as the characters you already knew and loved. There's just a really great progression from the start of the series to the end where everything comes together. And I think, and this is what I feel about most of Neil Shusterman's books, is there's this constant sort of subtext that comments on society, the sort of people we are, and what we allow and don't allow to happen. Yeah, so that's it. Those are 3 favorite series. What I'm going to try and do is upload a new video every Sunday. Hopefully this actually happens, but that's the goal for it. If you like this video, like it below, subscribe. I'm going to put the subscription over here somewhere. Videos. If you have your own booktube, comment with your link. I'd definitely love to check it out. And if you have anything else you want to comment on the video, like what are your favorite series, I'd love to hear that. Comment and tell me all about that. And if you want to follow me, chat with me, you can follow me on my Twitter over here, or you can check out my blog where I blog about books, more essentially of what's happening here. You can check that out over here as well. And thanks for watching.